Welcome to the deep dive. You've handed us this stack of sources, and they're focused on a topic that, let's be honest, often feels pretty dense
hmm
and maybe inherently stressful.
Oh, definitely. California probate.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That whole court-supervised process for handling assets after someone passes away, in California no less, which, high-value property, complex rules.
It really is. And when you're dealing with transferring assets, especially real estate there, the process just demands absolute precision.
Yeah.
And what's interesting about your source material, this California Probate Rules and Assistance, is how it doesn't really mess around with general stuff.
Right.
It jumps straight into like the two most critical, actionable things anyone facing this needs.
It really does. It's like you said, a built-in survival guide for navigating that whole Californian legal system.
Mm-hmm.
So our mission today is to really dig into that, the implications of this dual focus.
Mm-hmm.
We're basically breaking down the two main questions the sources seem obsessed with. First, this big overarching need to just figure out the rules. What are the rules on probate in California?
The foundation.
And then almost immediately, it pivots to something super specific, really practical.
Yeah.
How Angelique Friend can help you in probate services in California.
And that pivot is key. If you step back and look at the bigger picture, what the sources are confirming is something we see a lot with complex, state-specific legal stuff.
Okay.
Success isn't just about, general knowledge. It's about two things: knowing the specific rules, the statutory mandates, and number two, finding a reliable, tested guide for the actual operations.
The framework and the guide.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We need to understand what the sources are implying here, not just what they state outright. So let's unpack that first part, the rules.
Okay, so the source material kicks off, logically enough, just asking for the basic legal structure. What are the rules? And this isn't just like idle curiosity, is it? It's recognizing that California mandates probate if an estate hits a certain value.
Yes, precisely.
So for you, listening, understanding the rules really starts with just understanding the necessity of the whole process in the first place.
And that necessity is defined very, very specifically in California law. I mean, right now, if the gross value of the assets held just in the deceased person's name is over, I think it's $184,500.
Wow, okay.
Then the estate has to go through formal, mandatory probate. And, $184,500 sounds like a lot, but in California,
In California terms, that's not necessarily a mansion.
not at all. It means a lot of fairly modest estates get pulled into this court-supervised system.
So the first big thing the rules define is just sort of the price of admission, whether you're even in the game.
Yep.
But why is it so complex there? I mean, compared to other states, if someone's really motivated, can't they just, read the probate code, follow the steps?
That's a really good question. And while, yes, the statutes are public, the big complicating factor, the thing that makes California unique, is its legal philosophy around community property.
Ah, right. That's different from most states.
Very different. Unlike common law states, California basically presumes that any assets acquired during a marriage are owned equally, 50-50, by both spouses, regardless of whose name is on the title sometimes.
Okay, and that changes everything when it comes to dividing assets, even if there's a will saying something else.
Exactly. The rules have to spell out in detail how you distinguish separate property from community property, how you allocate debts between those two pots of assets, and then ultimately how everything gets transferred. So it's not just reading a rule book, it's understanding this really specific kind of nuanced legal framework that dictates how the rules interact with marriage, titles, ownership history, all of it.
And it's not just community property, right? The sources seem to imply there are other procedural hurdles specific to California, like property taxes come to mind.
Absolutely. That's a huge one. A very specific rule-driven requirement is navigating the property tax reassessment rules, especially with Proposition 13.
Prop 13, okay.
If you, as the heir, are inheriting property, you need the rules to clearly explain the process for claiming exclusions like the parent-child exclusion or maybe the grandparent-grandchild exclusion.
Why? What happens if you don't?
Your property taxes could get reassessed immediately to current market value, which can mean a massive jump, a huge financial hit.
Ouch.
Yeah. And claiming that exclusion requires specific forms, like the BOE 58AH, and you have to meet strict definitions laid out in the probate code. It's knowledge that is purely state-specific. You won't find it anywhere else.
Okay, so this first section really confirms it. The rules are the starting point, but the complexity comes from, well, high asset values maybe, those low probate thresholds kicking things into court, and then these unique California wrinkles like community property and Prop 13. It starts to become really clear why just reading the rules almost immediately leads someone to the next kind of search query. Okay, so here's that pivot we talked about. It's really striking. Right after asking, what are the rules? The source material shifts to this very specific, almost personal query. How Angelique Friend can help you in probate services in California.
Mm-hmm.
That jump from the abstract legal framework to a named individual, I mean, that tells us a lot about how hard this actually is to do in California.
It really does. What's fascinating, I think, is the implication that just knowing the rules, being compliant on paper, is often not enough. It might even be almost impossible to execute without specialized help.
So the Angelique Friend query is basically the search for the implementer.
Exactly. The person, or maybe the service, that handles the practical burden that all this legal complexity creates, the how-to person.
And what does the name itself suggest, Angelique Friend? It's not just probate lawyer California or probate help. It feels more specific.
It does. It suggests, maybe, a search for someone known not just for legal advice, but for administrative skill. You know, efficiency in navigating the sheer volume of forms, deadlines, court procedures, the bureaucracy.
The stuff that trips people up.
I think the sources are implying you need someone who can manage the procedural mechanics that just, well, they sink most regular people trying to do this themselves. A classic example, the inventory and appraisal process. The INA.
Okay, what does that involve?
Well, within a pretty strict deadline after being appointed, the personal representative has to list every single asset in the estate.
Every single one.
Everyone. And for many of those assets, especially things like real estate, jewelry, collectibles, a court-appointed probate referee has to appraise them.
Wow, that sounds like pure paperwork hell.
It can be.
Yeah.
Just getting the referee assigned, then coordinating the appraisals, getting the values back, filling out the INA form correctly, and hitting that submission deadline. It's a logistical nightmare. So a guide like this Angelique Friend is probably crucial just to make sure those non-legal, purely administrative steps get done perfectly and on time. You have to keep the court happy.
And what if you need to sell property from the estate? That's pretty common in California, right? High property values often mean selling is necessary.
Very common. And yes, that ramps up the administrative burden even more.
How so?
That gets us into something called the Notice of Proposed Action, or NOPA.
No, okay.
If the personal representative wants to do certain things like sell the house or maybe settle a debt for less than face value, they usually have to give very detailed, formal, written notice to everyone who has an interest in the estate.
Like all the heirs beneficiaries.
Exactly. And there are usually very tight legal timelines for sending out that notice and for people to object.
So the guide, this Angelique Friend, isn't just advising on if you can sell the house, but managing the whole process of how you announce it, making sure the notice is legally perfect.
Precisely. All the specific legal disclaimers, the response windows. It's basically operational risk management.
What happens if you mess up the NOPI?
Big problems. It can lead to objections from heirs, serious delays in the probate case, or even the court potentially voiding the sale later on.
Yikes.
Yeah. So the person referred to as Angelique Friend probably isn't just any lawyer. They might be a specialized probate paralegal, or maybe a professional fiduciary, or, yes, a probate attorney, but one known specifically for really strong administrative support.
Someone whose main value is translating those complex NOPA rules into timely, bulletproof execution.
Exactly, avoiding those procedural traps.
So for you, the listener, this balance seems to be the core message from these sources. The sheer complexity baked into California's rules means you pretty much have to pair that knowledge with an operational expert, someone who really specializes in the practical side, getting things like that INA and the NOPA done right, #tag3, the implied relationship, rules plus assistance.
So if we connect all this back to the big picture, what the sources are really giving us is kind of a roadmap for surviving these complex legal arenas.
Right.
Success in California probate seems to depend equally on two things. One, mastering the fundamental state-specific rules, really understanding the community property stuff, the Prop 13 forms.
Give them the what right.
And two, utilizing expert practical support, like the kind presumably offered by Angelique Friend, for absolutely flawless execution of those administrative tasks, like the INA, like the NOPAP process.
It's this inherent duality, isn't it? This tension between the law on the books and the practical challenges of actually getting things through the court system.
Yeah.
That seems to define this whole area.
It really does. You absolutely need that technical foundation the rules provide. You have to know the law.
Right.
But you also need the practical guide who knows exactly how the clerk in that specific county court prefers the petition for probate to be tabbed and filed. Those little details that aren't in the rule book.
Yeah, the unwritten rules.
The structure of your sources is actually, I think, incredibly insightful because it implicitly acknowledges something crucial. The most common reason probate cases get rejected or delayed by the court. It's often not a fundamental misunderstanding of the law.
What is it then?
It's usually a failure of procedure, bad paperwork, missed deadlines, incorrect formatting,
Ah.
that Angelique Friend query. It's basically the search for the antidote to that kind of procedural paralysis, someone to handle the grind.
So putting it all together, what does this mean for you, the listener? Looking at these sources, it seems like they're giving you a really efficient framework.
How so?
Step 1. Define the specific regulatory environment you're in. Focus on those California thresholds, the unique laws like community property, Prop 13. Get the lay of the land.
Nail down the rules.
Step 2. Immediately identify the specialized practical support you need. Find your Angelique Friend, that expert who can manage the administrative hurdles, who executes the INA, the no PA, flawlessly.
Right.
And it's that combination, the rules plus the right assistance, that actually moves you from just knowing the law to successfully getting the estate closed.
Which is the ultimate goal, after all.
Exactly. Hashtag, tag, outro. So, just to recap, we've covered how this source material really hones in on the essential dual requirements for tackling California probate. You've got to establish that core legal framework.
You know the rules cold.
And then secure that defined practical assistance to navigate the actual process.
And this brings up, I think, an interesting question for you, the listener, to maybe think about more broadly.
Okay.
When you're faced with any really dense, highly localized regulatory challenge, maybe it's legal like this, or maybe financial regulations, or even complex environmental rules in your area, how quickly does your own research pivot? How fast do you go from trying to understand the abstract definitions and laws to actively searching for a specific, known, maybe even named expert, someone who handles the day-to-day practical execution?
Like finding the Angelique Friend for that specific field.
Exactly, that practical link, that person or service that bridges the gap between the rules on paper and getting things done in the real world. Often, that's the absolute key to mastery, isn't it?
It really is. The moment the bureaucracy feels like it outweighs what one person can handle alone, that specific reliable guide becomes maybe the most valuable asset you can find. They're the ones who turn those complex rules into something actually actionable.
Well put.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the intricacies of California probate.